Just a warning, this episode contains some graphic material that listeners may find confronting. It was late May 2018 and Bonham's auction room on the 20th floor of a swish Hong Kong office tower overlooking Victoria Harbour was about to offer lot 658. Now, according to the brochure, the single-stoned diamond ring was a step-cut diamond sitting between baguette-cut diamond shoulders, weighing 6.03 carats. A D flawless diamond is a true rarity in what is already a rarefied world, read the offering.
This is a beautiful example. It's D colour and flawless. It's a good shape. It's a beautiful cut. It's elegant. And it embodies luxury and prestige and style and tradition all at once.
That's Victoria Green. She's a Sydney antique dealer and a jewellery expert who explained why this ring was so special.
It's very rare and expensive. As you look at it, it kind of gets better and better. Just over 6 carats, which is fabulous. D colour, which is the best colour you can get, and it's what's called internally flawless, which means it has no inclusions or imperfections. So it is just the best you could buy. And then the fact that it's a type 2A diamond means it's just extremely, extremely rare.
With Victoria Green's help, we've managed to find out who it was that was selling that ring.
And it may come as no surprise that the vendor of this superb diamond ring, which was sold in Bonham's rare jewellery auction in Hong Kong in May 2018 for a mere snip $620,000, was none other than Melissa Caddick.
Welcome to episode 5 of Liar Liar, Melissa Caddick and the Missing Millions. Hi, I'm Tom Steinfort, a reporter with 60 Minutes.
And I'm Kate McClymont, an investigative journalist at the Sydney Morning Herald. We're delving into one of the most extraordinary crimes of the century. Melissa Caddick, a seemingly successful Sydney businesswoman, turned out to be a sociopathic con artist who stole more than $23 million from clients, mainly family and friends, who thought their funds were being invested in shares.
Within hours of her home being raided by the corporate regulator, she disappeared.
Where is she? The millionaire is accused of stealing from friends to fund her lavish lifestyle.
She hasn't been in touch with her family. She hasn't been in touch with her friends.
This was a systematic and meticulous attempt to defraud investors.
4 or 5 million?
About $10 million.
You name it, Christian Dior, Chanel.
She was living off our money.
She is a survivor and she would have had a plan.
Nothing would surprise any of us.
You know how much we love you. You just come home, everything's taken care of, you're not in trouble.
Hi, it's Melissa Caddick.
In this episode, we're going to look at exactly what Melissa Caddick was doing with those vast sums of money that were pouring into her Ponzi scheme.
We'll also look at why she was driven to spend like there was no tomorrow.
But first of all, let's go back to Melissa and that amazingly flawless ring.
She purchased this exquisite bauble for $590,000 in April 2017.
And taking out the buyer's premium when it sold in Hong Kong just over a year later, she received $466,000 from the sale. So it ended up costing Melissa, actually, let's be honest, it cost her victims $124,000 for that privilege of Melissa owning the ring for just over a year.
Look, that's right. And the tragedy surrounding this ring is that she stole money from her own parents, Barb and Ted Grimley, to complete the purchase. We've got a receipt dated the 11th of April 2017, and this shows that she made the final payment of $300,000 to her favourite jeweller, Stefano Canturi, who owns a jewellery shop in Castlereagh Street in Sydney CBD.
Now, she'd already handed over $290,000 from funds that she'd stolen from other victims, but it appears that she was actually waiting for her unwitting parents to provide extra money for the rest of it because the ring was more than $500,000.
I cannot get my head around this, that you would spend $590,000 on a single diamond. And Tom, for me, this is where her monstrous behaviour sinks to a new low, because only 4 days earlier she'd received $1.1 million from her parents. And this was the proceeds from the sale of the family home at Connells Point in Sydney South.
Melissa's parents believed that their money was going towards a penthouse apartment that she'd bought for them in Edgecliff, which is an upmarket suburb in Sydney's eastern suburbs. And the deal was that they could then stay rent-free for the rest of their lives. Now, Alice, who was a friend of both Melissa and her brother Adam, remembers the plan.
I recall a conversation I had with Melissa, and she was saying that she was buying this apartment and she would allow her parents to live there for the rest of their lives. And then once they passed, she and Anthony would live there for 6 months of the year and in Aspen for 6 months of the year, because she could run her company anywhere in the world.
The hunt for an apartment for her elderly parents had begun in earnest in November the previous year. As far as Ted and Barb knew, their only daughter was a high-flying financial advisor, and they were so proud of her that they recommended Melissa to their friends, who invested their retirement savings with her.
One thing that strikes me is that Ted and Barb, they'd lived their entire lives in a quiet, comfortable part of the southern suburbs near the Georges River in Sydney, and now all of a sudden their daughter is just insisting that you've got to uproot your life and move over to my side of town, one of the most affluent pockets of Sydney.
You have to think how hard this would have been for them. They had no connections with the neighbours, no friends. They had no history in this area at all.
Yeah, but I think the main deal here was it was convenient for Melissa.
Of course it was.
So look, and something that spells this out pretty clearly is an email that we've obtained that she sent to her parents back in November 2016. It's colder than an Arctic winter, pretty extraordinary reading. It says, "Hi Mum and Dad, regarding properties, as I am putting capital in, I will be treating it as a business transaction. The motivation being you get a place closer to all of us, which would be easier all round, closer to transport and easy access to shops, city, hospitals, school. Here's the good bit. The long-term view for me is that once you are both deceased, brackets, sorry, but it will happen one day, is that it will become another source of income, and the final outcome will be that I have a place. So, translation, sorry Mum and Dad, you're going to die soon, but I'd like to benefit from it."
I just can't believe that you would talk to your parents like that.
Yeah, honestly, that bit in the email where she says, once you are both deceased, God, it just shows how completely tone deaf Melissa is to the needs of her parents. And I find it so telling, Barb and Ted's reply was, oh yeah, we'll chat later, but in the meantime, they were heading off to the local Apple store for a lesson on how to use an iPhone. I mean, their lifestyle is just worlds apart from Melissa's.
I know, and look, the rest of their email is just full of, literal mumbo jumbo. And I sort of wondered whether she was deliberately trying to bamboozle them with all these terms. But, the sad thing was at the end of this, her parents handed over $1.1 million, and they thought that they were reducing the mortgage stress for Melissa. But the apartment was totally owned by her, with the agreement being that Barb and Ted Grimley, both in their 80s, would live in that penthouse rent-free for the rest of their lives.
As we've previously mentioned, every Christmas Barb and Ted would send out a letter detailing the family's adventures and achievements over that last 12 months.
And in December 2017, the letter that they sent out to their family and friends detailed their big, exciting change earlier in the year, which was moving to Edgecliff. But Barb and Ted noted their sadness in having to part with their 2 Moran leather sofas and their Parker velvet lounge suite. But it was time for a change, they said.
Yeah, the next part of the letter, though, it's pretty heartbreaking because it just shows their vulnerability. This is what they wrote in the letter. Challenges of mature age are always near, but we face them together. We are forever grateful living in an age of modern medicine, new surgical procedures and research. As the saying goes, old age ain't for sissies. How true.
Liquidator Bruce Gleeson tracked what happened to Ted and Barb's money once their daughter got hold of it. It's completely villainous. Melissa squandered it on luxury goods, and the Grimleys now find themselves in the very same position as several other of their daughter's victims, and that is facing old age, penniless and potentially homeless.
I think the significant point there is that the money got handed over after the settlement of the Edgecliff unit. It then went to Melissa. Melissa then injected that into different sort of accounts and used it for different things. So timing is important there.
What sort of different things?
Jewellery.
How much did she spend on that particular single diamond?
Several $100,000.
And that was purely the parents' money?
It would seem.
Because of what Melissa did to them, Barb and Ted Grimley are now having to find money to fight a legal battle to prevent the liquidator selling their Edgecliff penthouse and then distributing the sale proceeds among Melissa's many victims.
And adding to their stress is that their son-in-law, Anthony Coletti, he's recently lodged his own claim over not just their Edgecliff apartment, but just about everything else his wife Melissa bought with all those stolen millions.
But back to what Melissa did with her parents' money, and on that very same day as they transferred the cash, she paid Canturi Jewellers the remaining $300,000 for a diamond ring she bought, and she also forked out almost $50,000 to a private jet company for flights to Aspen.
This is now April, Easter time. She'd already spent $100,000 on their annual month-long Christmas trip to Aspen, just back in January. And for those who don't know, Aspen is the winter playground for the rich and famous. And I think Melissa would have fitted in just perfectly there. It appears that the private jet fees that you just referred to, Tom, they were for a lightning visit to go back to Aspen for just a few days over Easter. And you're going to love this. It was so her husband, Anthony, could DJ an event at the Belly Up Music Festival in Colorado.
Now, look, the amount of money that Melissa was spending on overseas trips, it is absolutely mind-boggling. I mean, we're talking close to $500,000 every single year. And look, as part of the investigations, we've actually managed to dig up a bit of a list of some of her bills from her holidays. I mean, let's rattle some of these off here, Kate. This was a cheap one. Aspen, $35,000 for a trip.
Yeah, we've got Fiji, $63,000.
Now, whoever was getting the commissions at Flight Centre would have been doing well because she racked up a $108,000 bill at Flight Centre alone.
Oh, and then there was the week-long trip to Hong Kong for almost $19,000.
Oh, it's a cheap one because you compare it to New York, ducked over there with the family, $37,000, bang, gone.
And the north of Nell, the apartment in Aspen, that was a snip at $34,000.
$55,000 at Qantas, $43,000 on a trip to Whistler. And what makes that spending just so obscene is the fact that initially she was actually on holiday with the family at Aspen, but Melissa decided that the snow wasn't good enough for her there, so she upped stumps with the whole gang and they paid for a whole new trip to the Canadian resort of Whistler.
Another thing that jumps out at me is what she did when she first got her hand on Kate Horn's life savings. And this was in late 2012. And I think this is really sad because Kate Horn, who's tightening her belt, she's taking her kids on simple camping holidays. Meanwhile, Melissa is using her oldest friend's money to treat her own family to a few heady weeks in Aspen, topped off with a side trip to enjoy the white sands and the turquoise waters of Cancun in Mexico.
Yeah, and then over Easter, the family jets off, business class of course, to the 5-star Hyatt Regency, which is right on the shores of the famous Waikiki Beach in Honolulu. Kate Horn's money was spent on helicopter rides, stretch limos, dinners at the most expensive restaurants, even a new necklace for Melissa as well, worth $7,000.
Aloha. They loved Hawaii so much, they were back at the Hyatt in September school holidays. And according to the records, there were shopping sprees at Louis Vuitton and Hermes, surf lessons, excursions in a Hummer.
And hey, what about this? To always remember that beautiful holiday you had with other people's money. The loved-up couple, Melissa and Anthony, even got matching toe tattoos of Chinese symbols.
Speaking of all those trips, one of her school friends who stayed close to her first husband, Tony, told me that he and Tony would shake their heads about Tony's son constantly jet-setting around the world. And Tony would say to his friend, look, I just don't know where all this money is coming from because Melissa can't be earning anywhere near this. And I love this. They decided it must have been coming from Anthony Colletti's side of the family.
Yeah, look, in the decade before she disappeared, Melissa had 25 overseas trips. But let's drill down on a particular here. We're talking 2014, and we might actually start the night before. New Year's Eve 2013, and Melissa Caddick's family and friends have been invited to a fancy cocktail party at their 5-bedroom house in Rose Bay, which she was renting at the time for $2,900 a week. Here's her friend Kate Horn.
It was on a New Year's Eve. They were renting a house at the time, actually, which was also overlooking the harbour. She invited guests, but just said it was a New Year's Eve party to come. It was a cocktail New Year's Eve party. And then it was revealed they had a marriage celebrant there, and it was revealed that they were actually getting married that evening as well.
We had a bit of a New Year's Eve party, and we didn't want to tell anyone, make a big deal about it all, and then it turned into a wedding, and it was lovely. She was just, she was so happy to get married.
That was her husband Anthony Colletti speaking on Channel 7 Spotlight program.
Anthony actually shared the same April birthday as Melissa, but was 11 years her junior. They first met when he was working as a hairdresser for Joe Bailey, which is the salon of choice for Sydney's rich and famous.
Joe Bailey's flagship outlet is in the exclusive harbourside suburb of Double Bay, cruelly nicknamed Double Pay because of the prices in the exclusive fashion boutiques. But Anthony Colletti was working at Joe Bailey's less prestigious salon in the Westfield shopping complex at nearby Bondi Junction. Needless to say, Colletti is an integral part of this story, and we'll have a closer look at him later. But back to their wedding on New Year's Eve.
Completely catered for, lovely food. It was all finger food, but caterers coming into the house, champagne all night. She had 3 dress changes.
3?
Yeah.
Why did she need 3 dress changes?
Oh, I suppose it was a big event. I don't know. She started in a cocktail sort of gown, which was quite lovely, and then a very large strapless wedding gown with a very full tulle skirt to come down the stairs, after it was announced that they were actually getting married. She came, it wasn't to the altar, but to the celebrant wearing that. And then after the festivities, around about midnight, she popped upstairs again and got changed into a bit of a mini number.
Those invited to celebrate the nuptials didn't know it was their hard-earned savings that was paying for all the Moet champagne to flow on the night, and for the bride's 3 changes of outfits, which included her white Gucci wedding dress, which would have cost a bomb.
I would love to know how much that wedding dress cost, because it was singled out by Anthony Colletti as one of the items he wants back in a claim that he recently lodged over his wife's assets.
Yeah, this claim is actually fascinating. Apart from the Gucci wedding dress, he also wants $7 million in shares, $2 million worth of jewellery, the Dover Heights and Edgecliff properties, which Anthony claims are valued now at $20 million. And he's not done there. He also wants the proceeds from the sale of their luxury cars too. And of course, as we all know, these were bought by Melissa with investors' money. So naturally, they are not happy.
Having unknowingly forked out for Melissa's surprise wedding, the very next day, her investors' money was also used to pay for Melissa, her new husband Anthony, and her son to spend the entire month of January skiing in Aspen. On Instagram, Melissa posted photos of the 3 of them with the famous Ajax mountain in the background. You can see these on our website. Now, needless to say, they were all wearing Baugner ski outfits, which retail for thousands of dollars apiece.
So after a month of lapping up the most exclusive ski resort in the United States, Melissa finally headed home at the end of January, and she was determined to find a suitable matrimonial home befitting her newlywed status. And at the beginning of April 2014, she found it, buying the mansion on Wallangara Road, Dover Heights, for $6.2 million. Now, the brochure advertising this place is a beauty. It says, It was a breathtaking contemporary residence which enjoyed expansive harbour views and also a heated swimming pool.
Oh, and don't forget the 5 bedrooms and a home office. And there was also a no-expense-spared kitchen and a fabulous roof terrace, Tom.
When you go over the paperwork, it's pretty odd that Melissa's new hubby is nowhere to be seen on the title. Instead, Melissa's brother Adam is listed as a 1% owner of the house, with his sister owning the other 99%. Now, she bought it, as we said, for $6.2 million. $2.2 million of that was cash, purely stolen funds. She then obtained a loan on top of that for $4 million to cover the rest.
But this is interesting, just how she came to get a $4 million loan from the bank in the first place is a bit of a mystery, because we know that at the time her only source of income was stolen funds. And as Bruce Gleeson said,
there doesn't appear to be any other business activities that we've identified through the course of our investigations that show that there was any other source of income.
So she tricked the bank as well?
Arguably.
Well, I mean, there can't be any other way, really, because she didn't have the money. So she has conned the bank into lending her those millions of dollars.
It's a matter for the bank as to sort of how it would have satisfied itself, but certainly, the reality is that did she disclose all of the proper information? Probably not.
Now, look, I think for most people experience buying a house, certainly mine, you feel sick in your stomach about these new financial obligations, and you're always worrying, are you going to be able to manage to make those repayments if, there is a period of belt tightening coming up?
I know. Look, I don't know about your office, Tom, but one of the giveaways in our office is when you see people bringing their lunch into work and they have just bought a house.
I bring my lunch and my breakfast to work, so that might suggest...
How big is your mortgage?
I'm in mortgage stress by the sounds of it. But anyway, let's get back to Melissa's case, because after she's purchased that property, there wasn't a single austerity measure to be seen from her. At the time of her disappearance, her monthly mortgage repayments on both her parents' place and her own, they were about $30,000 a month. And despite this, if anything, her outrageous spending on all fronts was just increasing more and more. 4 days after she paid the deposit on the house, the family then jetted off again to New York for Easter, then spent July school holidays on a private island in Fiji, and then it was back to Aspen for a month over Christmas.
We're going to discuss the Fijian island paradise of Vomo in the next episode, but I just wanted to note it featured in Barb and Ted's Christmas letter. And this is what they said. We had a wonderful family holiday on Vomo, a tiny volcanic island off the coast of Fiji, accessed by helicopter. They go on to describe how they stayed at the residence, which had its own private lap pool, and that the chef whipped up a wonderful meal from the swordfish and the coral trout the family had caught earlier that day.
Gosh, Barb could get a job for the Fijian Tourism Board. That sounds idyllic, except I just looked it up and it's $8,000 a night to stay at the residences. So maybe not for the next holiday for us.
Along with the extravagant holidays, which sometimes involved private jets and limousines, Melissa seemed to be a shopaholic, spending a fortune on designer labels such as Chanel, Dior, Valentino, Oscar de la Renta, Gucci, Hugo Boss and Louis Vuitton. Here are how two of her investors, Alice and Cheryl, described Melissa's clothes.
I can recall seeing a whole lot of jackets, and she said, it doesn't really matter what you sort of wear underneath your jacket. You can wear jeans or anything. If you've got a good Gucci jacket, you're okay. And so she had them in all the colours. You pulled open a drawer and there were all the handbags in sizing and colours.
We go to meet at a bank and she's wearing a Chanel dress that just looked totally out of place. But there was the picture of success.
Melissa's so-called generosity extended to letting her personal trainer Michelle have access to the finery that she'd bought using, well, her money.
Borrowed a few dresses, go to the big wardrobe, pick what I wanted, nice matching handbag, yeah.
So that was the level of friendship that she was like, come on in, whatever's mine in the wardrobe, you can borrow too.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was in there?
Well,
sounds like Aladdin's cave.
It was, you name it, Chris and Dior, Chanel, gowns, all the shoes, photos taken of the shoes, all labelled in boxes. Very organised. Amazing.
Pretty expensive taste, would it be fair to say?
Very expensive taste, yes.
What's your reaction when you walk in and see all of that?
Wow, someone's doing well. Especially when you look down the harbour and you see that view. Everything's immaculate. House is always pristine.
Now, if you want some interesting reading, we've actually got the detailed breakdown of what Melissa was spending on luxury labels. This came from ASIC investigator Isabella Allen. This is so interesting because the spending breakdown we've got is actually only for an 18-month period from December 2017. At Christian Dior alone, Melissa dropped $229,000.
Well, and then there's Chanel, $48,588.
I don't even know what Cosmopolitan Shoes is, but she managed to drop 52 grand there.
Tom, that's double pay territory.
Triple pay by the looks of it.
And then there was Louis Vuitton, $17,777.
She went easy on Valentino, only 14 grand there.
Oh, a snip. Canturi Jewellers, $187,650.
45 grand at Farfetch, 39 grand at Net-a-Porter. Oscar de la Renta, 14 grand. And then what's this last one here, Kate?
Bergdorf Goodman is a luxury department store on New York's Fifth Avenue. And that was $17,617. And you know what, Tom? That was probably just on that one trip that they went on for Easter. So she's racked up almost 20 grand just visiting one shop in New York.
And the last one, purely deemed personal expenses, $291,000, whatever that was.
And Tom, this isn't even her Amex card, her Qantas card, or any of those other ones that she had. Now, experts have suggested that Caddick might have had a shopping addiction or what is now known as compulsive buying disorder or CBD. Now, researchers indicated that CBD mainly affects women and the age of onset is in the early 20s, which often corresponds with leaving home and gaining financial independence. There is a really interesting book called I Shop, Therefore I Am by April Lane Benson, in which she says perfectionism, dishonesty, insecurity, and the need to gain control have all been linked to this disorder.
Yeah, I mean, when you think of controlling behaviour, she ticked just about every box. And, you know, not talking just about the way that she ran her Ponzi scheme, but it was also an unmistakable feature really in her marriage to Anthony Coletti, who she really saw as her junior in every respect. We're going to dig into that a little bit later on.
And those with compulsive buying disorder report having negative emotions such as depression, anxiety, and low self-esteem. And these, shopping forays provide them with feelings of relief or euphoria. But let's hear what some experts have to offer about fraud offenders.
Yes, well, I'm Olaf Nielsen and I'm a psychiatrist with a bit of an interest in forensic type issues, including fraud. I mean, the usual motive is to get money for some addiction of some kind. The most common one nowadays is gambling, but there's also drug addictions. There's fraud for duress. People get into financial difficulties and they see that as the only way to kind of solve the problem. And of course, there's fraud for an extravagant lifestyle, for spending and for, living a fantasy life that, again, people can't afford and they see that as the only way of achieving it.
Dr. Nielsen said that fraud is one of the few offences in which women exceed men.
You often see, absurd spending on things that people don't even need. It's certainly very common for people to comfort shop, when they have emotional distress, to buy things to alleviate that discomfort.
Dr. Nielsen said that the people who are compulsive shoppers often buy the same luxury goods.
Shoes they've never worn, or multiple versions of the same watch.
It's pretty funny that Dr. Nielsen mentions that because Melissa's friend Michelle, who we've been talking about here, she actually showed me photos of a certain dress that Melissa had. help me out here, Hervey Ledger.
Irv Leisure.
Okay, yeah, an Irv Leisure. She had 6 different colours of the exact same dress from that designer.
And look, the thing about that dress that you're talking about, they retail at thousands of dollars each, and she has got 6 of them just in different colours. So you're sort of looking at the combination of the compulsion to alleviate emotional distress by buying these things, combined with the pleasure of the shopping experience. Another Sydney psychiatrist, Dr. Julian Parmigiani, also suggested that the way shop assistants or airline staff fawn over customers to make them feel special can also be addictive.
There is a degree of addiction to excessive spending and luxury spending. Well, the problem, you get an enormous boost to your ego, and you get treated literally like royalty when you go to a 5, these days a 6-star hotel. You get flown first class. You really treat like you're special.
I just find that so interesting. And Julian Parmigiani, he made another interesting point. He said it's not only the rush that you get from these, sycophantic sales staff. For people like Melissa, there's an added boost to your ego when you're leaving a shop and you're seen, carrying that fancy little bag that says, "I've been shopping at Dior."
Or Chanel.
All of them.
Once you walk out of the shop with a $6,000 handbag, people who know, they will look at it and go, "Wow, who is she? Is she a celebrity? Is that someone famous or rich?" So, and the person who's got the $6,000 handbag will look around and get confirmation of that status, their high status within society. It's very flattering.
Dr. Parmigiani also said that fraudsters like Melissa Caddick see themselves as the predator and their victims their prey, and it makes them feel intellectually superior.
But there's also a psychological component where people feel if they can convince someone to hand over money under false pretenses, then you as a fraudster are cleverer than your target. But to actually separate someone from their hard-earned savings, it's a real task, and not everyone's got the skills to do it.
He also told us that most fraudsters don't use their ill-gotten gains to set themselves up financially, but that they end up just blowing the cash.
Look, in my experience, the overwhelming majority do it to support their lifestyle, to support their fragile self-esteem. They want to feel superior, they want to feel above everyone else, but the majority of people just spend it on a lavish lifestyle.
Dr. Nielsen mentioned that central to fraudsters like Melissa is this fantasy, I guess, the grandiose imagining of a lifestyle of the rich and famous. And this really made me think of Melissa's fantasies about the luxury goods that she simply was pretending to own, Kate.
I know, I think it's part of creating that fantasy life. And Tom, I love that saying, big hat, no cattle. It's an American saying which means that someone has the facade of being a wealthy rancher when it's in fact all for show. And the best example of Melissa's big hat, no cattle phenomenon was the Aspen apartment.
Oh, yeah. This one is a doozy. Now, Melissa stayed for about a month every year in the exact same apartment in Aspen, and she told her husband, her brother, her friends, everyone that she owned this apartment.
Her school friend Kate Horn was invited to stay in Melissa's winter home away from home.
Well, she was showing me some photos of their holiday, and I said, pretty impressive accommodation you had. You're so close to the ski lifts. It's not nice and easy, very nice. And she said, "Oh yes. Well, we did shop around, but we've bought it. And if ever you want to go to Aspen, you're always welcome. You can stay there." I think she knew full well I didn't want to go to Aspen.
One skier who was staying across the hall from Melissa told me that she went to some trouble to organise a lunch for Melissa because she'd run into other people who said, "Oh, look, we own an apartment in north of Nell." And this person thought, it would be very nice for Melissa to meet fellow owners. And Tom, you won't believe it, but right at the last moment, Melissa texted to say that she'd been knocked over by a snowboarder and unfortunately she wouldn't be able to make lunch to meet her fellow owners.
But the reality is she didn't go to that lunch because she knew she did not own the apartment and she didn't want to be called out on her lie.
In December 2016, So, as we know, she goes off to Aspen every holidays around Christmas time, stays in Aspen for a month. But she had her solicitor, Jennifer Williamson, in tow. And this is important because just before she left, she drew up her first will.
I think this is what we call a cul-de-sac of lies, Kate.
I love that. I love that.
Swimming in her own lies and doesn't know what to do. So she's obviously told Jennifer, the lawyer, oh yeah, I own this apartment. So then when she's drawing up the will, well, she's got to continue the lie. So she says, oh yeah, put that apartment in the will because I own it.
And look, you can picture the scenario of Melissa, like she's such a narcissist. And as you say, she's trying to inflate her sense of self-importance. So you can understand that when Jennifer Williamson came to draw it up, she was saying, oh, you'll love Aspen, Jennifer. You'll love my apartment. And yes, I'll just pop that non-existent asset into my will.
Now, you tried to clear this up with Jennifer Williamson.
I know, and look, sadly, she just replied to me, I am unable to assist you with your inquiry. I tried, Tom, I tried.
Full points. And look, I think this is what we love about you. You're known as a bit of a bloodhound when it comes to tracking information. I think the best judge on this front, why don't we perhaps go to former Prime Minister Paul Keating?
No, Tom,
yes,
no.
Yes. Big fan of yours, big fan. He once accused you of spending your time, I think the quote was, sniffing bicycle seats and chasing subterranean odours.
I think that was very unpleasant of him, Tom, and I think it reflects more on him than me.
Well, it's better to be talked about than not talked about, Kate. That's what we'll say. A Prime Minister is keen to discuss you. And look, I understand that you have something of a link to Melissa Caddick's apartment in Aspen. And as I understand it, something to do with sharing a bed?
While I was doing my sleuthing, I realised that I once stayed in that exact apartment that Melissa claimed to own. And I only recognised it when I was looking at the for sale brochures and I saw the hideous copper artwork out of the corner of my eye.
And just for clarity, have you put that apartment in your will now, Kate?
Oh, Tom, along with Buckingham Palace, they're both in there. Anyway, when I first heard that she was missing and that she owned this apartment in north of Nell, I made some inquiries. Now, the first thing I did was ring the building manager, who assured me Melissa did not own apartment 3A or indeed any other apartment in the building. Instead, he told me that for the past 5 years or so, she had spent US $40,000 renting apartment 3A for that month over the January school holidays. And not only did Aspen land title records fail to reveal Caddick owning anything, that apartment she claimed was hers sold exactly 4 weeks before she went missing. And Tom, it sold for US $3.9 million.
So Australian dollars, that's $5.5 million worth of big noting for Melissa. And of course, she also led her friends to believe that she owned her Dover Heights mansion outright as well, which of course we discussed earlier. She barely made a dent on the repayments for that. She was still owing about $4 million at the time she disappeared.
Look, there's an interesting thing about the mortgage that you just alluded to, because at the time that she went missing, which was in November 2020, she'd prepaid those mortgages on both her house and the parents' Edgecliff property up until the end of March the next year.
Yeah, and it's really interesting here because the liquidator, Bruce Gleeson, we've spoken to him about whether there were any telltale signs that Melissa was preparing for the end. And he said, no, didn't find any, except that one thing. He just had that constant question in his mind. Why would she have paid at that particular time 5 months in advance on her mortgage?
I know, it's a mystery that we just don't know the answer to.
Another recipient of Melissa's generosity was her husband, Anthony. Apart from all of the splendid holidays they went on together, she also bought him a $390,000 Audi R8 convertible. We've put some photos up on the website of Anthony posing with his pride and joy, this bright blue V10 Audi. This is how Bruce Gleeson described it.
He's fixated by his Audi R8. It's his toy. He doesn't want to lose it.
Except that he almost did lose it. Melissa threatened Anthony with having to catch the bus if he ran up one more speeding or traffic fine.
Naughty boy. Bruce Gleeson told us that Coletti claimed he had bought the car and that the liquidators had no right at all to sell it. However, the liquidators told us that Anthony earned a pretty modest income doing casual work as a hairdresser.
There was nothing that we've got that is substantive that would be an explanation as to how certain assets might have been potentially acquired by him.
As we mentioned earlier, that hasn't stopped Anthony from lodging a claim, not just over his beloved car, but the other assets he's got his eye on are $2 million worth of jewellery that Melissa lavished on both herself and on him.
Yeah, in April 2020, this is only 5 months before she disappeared, Melissa sent her friend and employee, Nicole, a photo showing Melissa and Anthony with their hands jointly clasped on a knife, poised to cut into their joint birthday cake, which Nicole has provided for us. It's up on the website.
She sent it to me as I made her a lasagna and bought her a bloody birthday cake because she was working so hard because of COVID and watching the market like a hawk to ensure our portfolios were okay.
So looking at this photo, Melissa is pretty casually dressed, but there's just one thing that jumps out at you from this picture. It's an extraordinary black sapphire necklace that she's wearing with the run-of-the-mill T-shirt.
It's from the Stella collection, and according to Stefano Canturi's website, this necklace was inspired by the elegance of the beautiful night sky. It features a heap of black sapphires and diamonds.
Melissa told her friends at the time that the necklace alone had cost $250,000. And don't forget that she also bought the matching earrings to go with that. And hubby Anthony, well, he got a matching crucifix featuring the same sapphires and diamonds.
It's interesting that in another birthday snap that was taken on that same day, the birthday girl Melissa is opening a present. It's a box containing Asics shoes, and birthday boy Anthony is sporting his bejewelled crucifix.
Now, you know, we are becoming masters of zooming in on pictures for clues as well, and something caught my eye in this particular image. It's Melissa's watch, and look, bizarrely, I can actually say that I've seen them in a shop before. It's a Cartier Panther, I think it's called. They retail for anywhere up to about $50,000 for that little bit of wristwear.
Tom, you don't actually strike me as the kind of person to be browsing through or to even know. How did you pronounce that again?
Cartier.
How did you know that?
Yeah, look, this dates back to when I was getting a wedding present for my wife, and like any sort of clueless bloke, I heard good things about Cartier, so I thought I'd wander into the boutique and suss out some of the products there. They showed me this particular watch. I said, how much does that cost? They said $50,000, and I had to do that awkward charade that I think a lot of us have done before, where you pretend not to be shocked by that obscene amount of money that they've just mentioned, all the while backing out of the store pretty quickly, and needless to say, I never went back there again. But lucky for them, looks like Melissa was more than happy to fork out that much money.
Funnily enough, this famous Stella necklace also features in another photo. This is quite a well-known one where Melissa is wearing a magnificent midnight blue ball gown. And Tom, I've discovered that the gown is from the 2018 Oscar de la Renta collection. It's the strapless cloak ball gown in blue, and she bought it for $14,180 Australian dollars.
All right, we're looking at this photo. Why don't we do some quick sums here, Kate? Because she's wearing the $250,000 necklace, but also the matching earrings and bracelet. They're worth another $40,000. Her engagement ring, that cost $34,000, and then next to that is her wedding band, which was $26,500.
Oh, and don't forget, you can also see the Yves Saint Laurent evening bag. That's another couple of grand. And although we can't see the shoes, look, they'd be worth at least a few $1,000s.
Yeah, pretty conservative estimate there, I would have thought. Look, add all that to the $14,000 for the fancy frock. Melissa's outfit in total, $380,000.
And don't forget what Anthony is wearing. He's got the $26,000 wedding band, the $8,000 cufflinks. And Tom, you are the Zoom maestro. Can you zoom in onto that photo and tell me about the watch?
Well, I've identified that as a gentleman's steel Breitling chronograph Navi timer wristwatch. Enough names there to go around. And, Well, that'll set you back about $11,000. Now, add in a few grand worth for Anthony's swish tuxedo, and you're looking at a date night here, which has set back investors an eye-watering $420,000. And one thing to keep in mind here is that if that date night had been only a couple of weeks earlier, Melissa probably would have been wearing that flawless diamond ring that we told you she sold at the auction in Hong Kong. So Melissa alone would have been sporting more than $1 million worth of the proceeds of crime.
All of those pieces of bling, except for Anthony's watch, were from Stefano Canturi. And when police raided her house, they took 48 separate pieces of jewellery. But there was still another $100,000 necklace that Melissa had paid for, but that had been left behind still in the Stefano Canturi shop.
I love this anecdote from Nicole. She said that Melissa used to boast to her that her jewellery actually earned her income when top models and movie stars rented it from her so they could wear Melissa's jewels if they were at a catwalk event or starring in a movie.
Nicole now thinks that, like a lot of other things, that this was a lie. But it wasn't just a lie about this piece of jewellery. There's a fascinating tale about the whereabouts of several Argyle diamonds. And we're talking about diamonds that are worth millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah, and some people wonder whether this could also be a bit of an indicator on the whereabouts of Melissa. But we'll get to that shortly because let's focus on the Argyle diamond Enigma. It was explained to us by a lady called Bronwyn Brady, whose son was born only a fortnight earlier than Melissa's, and the two women ended up being in the same baby group in Paddington.
Yeah, so if we fast forward 13 years from the days of the baby group, Bronwyn told me this fascinating story about the fact that they're on the sideline at school sports. Her son has just started in year 7 at the same private school in Sydney's well-to-do eastern suburbs that Melissa's son was at. So, she's just started school. She doesn't know many parents. It's the crack of dawn, and both their sons are playing footy against some other school miles away on Sydney's North Shore.
There was a woman jogging around the oval consistently. So basically sort of training, like going round and round and round. And she had a puffer and like a hood on. So I didn't really take much notice other than I kept seeing her go round and round and round. And I remember joking with my husband saying, crikeys, why would you be doing that here? Because it was just sort of a bit odd because we're all standing there watching the game. At a half time or what have you, this woman jogged past and I saw that it was Melissa. And I said, that was you.
Melissa keeps chatting to Bronwyn and her interest is really piqued when Bronwyn mentions what she does for work.
I'm a private jeweller and I'm also a certified diamond wholesaler. So I trade in diamonds, which is very glamorous, but it's also it's interesting.
Immediately, Melissa wanted to set up a meeting telling Bronwyn,
oh, I invest in diamonds. I buy and sell them for one of the funds that I manage. And I said to her, what kind of diamonds? And she said, oh, I'm buying Argyle diamonds and, large diamonds, and then I hold them and then I sell them again.
Okay, so let's get a bit of background here. Have a listen to prominent Sydney radio broadcaster John Laws, aka the Golden Tonsils, spruiking Argyle diamonds as an investment for his listeners.
When it comes to investments, there's one asset class that stands out from all the rest: Argyle pink diamonds. Over the past 20 years, these beyond rare pink diamonds have consistently outperformed all major equity markets, and with the recent closure of the Argyle mine, now is your last opportunity to invest in a legacy that has spanned 37 years.
Because of their rarity, people don't often wear these diamonds. They invest in them.
So where they're stored in Sydney it's basically sort of like a James Bond vault. It's a business that has about 3 floors underground, and it literally has all the big security doors that you go through. You have to meet specific identification checks. They have a lot of security deposit boxes in there, and they have a record of who owns what and what's in there.
Bronwyn had one Argyle valued at around $1 million, which she mentioned to Melissa. But quick as a flash, Melissa replied saying that she'd already spent her jewellery budget for the year, and to prove the point, she sent through a message with a photo of her own Argyle diamonds. She said she'd picked them up at the Hong Kong Jewellery Fair.
And in one box there was 2 diamonds, and in the other box there was 1 diamond, but they were quite large diamonds and they were Argyle certified. And one of them caught my eye because it was a blue diamond. Now the blue diamonds are very rare. They're available, but they're very rare. They're also very, very expensive.
What are we talking about price-wise?
Millions, like millions of dollars. Multiple millions of dollars, yes. And she said, oh, I'm just going to leave them there for a couple of years and then I'll sell them. And I've got financial clients all in Korea and London and in Asia, and when I sell them, then I'll either buy more or I'll dip it into another fund that I have.
I'm looking at the photos that Melissa texted to Bronwyn, and you can see them on our website. But the diamonds are in a glass frame. They sort of look like a piece of artwork. The million-dollar question now is, where are these diamonds? Because nothing quite like them has been mentioned in the liquidators' reports, and nor has anything matching their description turned up in, say, any pieces of jewellery made for her by Canturi.
When Melissa went missing, because of the extraordinary value of those particular diamonds and the ease, really, of getting them out of the country and selling them offshore, Bronwyn decided she should perhaps go to police.
I then also explained this, in that at that stage I understood Melissa to have travelled quite extensively. But when you travel with diamonds, they don't X-ray.
So apart from diamonds being made of carbon and being undetectable when X-rayed, Bronwyn also told the police that these weren't any old pieces of jewellery.
They're millions of dollars. They're not like 50,000. These are very valuable diamonds.
You're obviously talking about millions and millions of dollars. Certainly we haven't located any Argyle diamonds, but again, I'd probably suggest to you that it's not inconsistent with her behaviour when we look at what she said with Aspen. And again, this was about Ms Caddick portraying such a sense of wealth. But certainly we haven't identified anything during the course of our investigations that show that there's some Argyle diamonds sort of sitting around, which, as you know, are very valuable.
A number of people have speculated as to whether Melissa had some sort of insurance plan for when her scheme finally came unstuck, some sort of asset stash offshore. Well, could these diamonds be that hidden offshore plan for her? Or, as Bruce Gleeson just suggested, was this another of her favourite furfies? Just like that Aspen apartment, remember? Nothing but a big, fat lie.
It's interesting that you say that, Tom, because there were signs that the scheme was coming unstuck. And in our next episode, we'll be looking at the unravelling of Melissa Caddick's fraud and whether she might have been reading the tea leaves. Was there a plan B?
I found out when a potential client of Melissa's did some due diligence on the documents they were provided.
I would say a lot of the time it's going to come from somebody sitting on the outer a little bit to basically be the whistleblower.
New concerning information came to light.
She's probably been setting this up for a long time, knowing that sooner or later it's got to crash.
If you have found any of the content of today's episode troubling, please contact Lifeline on 13 11 14.
Liar Liar is a co-production of the Sydney Morning Herald and 60 Minutes.
It was written and presented by Kate McClymont and Tom Steinfort.
Michael Evans is the Sydney Morning Herald's investigations editor and the series' supervising producer.
This episode was produced and edited by David McMillan with Tracy Hannaford for 60 Minutes.
Kirsty Thompson is the executive producer of 60 Minutes.
For more of Australia's best investigative journalism, subscribe to the Sydney Morning Herald by visiting smh.com.au and watch 60 Minutes on 9 or 9 Now every Sunday.
If you know more about Melissa Caddick's disappearance, please contact the team by emailing liarliarpodcast@smh.com.au.
A portion of Anthony Coletti's audio in this episode is from Spotlight, The Vanishing, and is used courtesy of the 7 Network.
Some names and voices have been changed in this series to protect the identity of victims.